Before we jump into today's episode, I'm so excited to be able to tell you that my debut book, Optimal You, Supercharge Your Energy, Strengthen Your Immunity, will be published on the 19th of November, with the Kindle edition available on the 18th for 99p for one day only, so set an alert in your diary. Optimal You is a groundbreaking guide uncovering the 8 pillars of health for supercharged energy and strengthened immunity to optimize your health and extend your health span. Delve into evidence-based strategies to optimize nutrition, balance your lifestyle, reduce toxin exposure, and address root causes of health imbalances. There's a 14-step anti-inflammatory nutrition blueprint included in the book to supercharge your mitochondria and fortify your immune system. Plus, my 4 lifestyle S's, sleep, stress, strength, and social, that form the foundation of optimal well-being. The book will help you to empower yourself with practical tools and insights to embark on a transformative journey towards the optimal version of you. You can pre-order your copy or read what people are saying about the book at optimalyoubook.com. Now let's head to today's episode. Welcome to the Good Health Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Good, a certified functional medicine practitioner, registered nutritionist, and author. In this podcast, we delve into the world of energy and immune health and wellness with positivity, from optimal health and energy to stress and burnout, right through to immune conditions such as thyroid and autoimmune disease. We deep dive into functional medicine, nutritional medicine, and lifestyle medicine, as well as the personal stories of our amazing guests, from Olympians to famous faces and guest experts from all different parts of the health and wellness world. It's time to stop letting your health hold you back and become the optimal version of you. Don't forget to come and join the conversation on Instagram at good_health, that's GOODE, or visit the website nicolegoodhealth.com to find out more. Welcome to today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about stress and thyroid health and the adrenal connection and how this all ties together. So in my 3-month program, which is for thyroid and fatigue conditions, if you join with the testing package, we test your gut, we test your adrenals, and we test your thyroid. That's the standard package. And there's good reason why this is that first foundational step that we take to look at your adrenals with your thyroid. And that's the part that we're going to be exploring today. In the modern world that we live in, stress has become almost a constant companion. It's there all the time for many of us. Whether we are meeting tight deadlines at work, we're juggling those family responsibilities, or we're just dealing with the pressures of everyday life, our bodies are under more continual low-lying stress than ever before, and often without us actually realizing it. You know, while this sort of occasional stress is an occasional stressor that comes on, that is a short-term thing, that's a normal part of life. And while that is normal, these chronic long-term stressors can really wreak havoc on lots of various parts of our health. And they are not normal. They're not normal for the type of pressure that we as humans should be under. They particularly have an impact on that delicate balance of the endocrine system. 2 critical players in this endocrine system are the thyroid and the adrenal glands. So the thyroid is responsible for regulating our metabolism, energy, mood, and the adrenals produces stress hormones like cortisol. And the 2 are really deeply interconnected, and it's this connection that we're diving into today. But when one of them is under strain, it can significantly impact the other. So when we see people with thyroid conditions, more often than not, they have an adrenal issue. And if we see somebody with adrenal issues, sometimes we need to check thyroid and make sure that that's all still balanced. Understanding the adrenal and thyroid connection is really key to addressing the symptoms that we get. So things like fatigue, the weight gain, the brain fog, mood changes, all these things that so many people struggle with, we need to make sure that we're looking at that adrenal thyroid connection. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at this complex relationship between stress, thyroid health, and adrenal function. And we're going to dive into how chronic stress can lead to thyroid imbalances themselves through that adrenal fatigue or burnout, or as we call it, HPA axis dysfunction, and why it's essential to approach these things by looking at this whole body. And this is really what this is about. These interconnections is about taking a whole body approach. And achieving that true health really is about more than just addressing isolated symptoms or an isolated body part. We need to really understand how different parts of the body are connected to each other and ensure that they're all working together.
And this is something that I do in my book, Optimal You. We really look at that holistic approach. We look at how stress and other root causes really can impact all the different pillars of your health, from your hormones to your gut to your mitochondria. And we pull it all together so that we're taking a whole body approach. And that's really, really important. So let's get started. Let's sort of have a brief introduction to the thyroid and the adrenals and to stress. The thyroid gland is a small butterfly-shaped organ located at the base of the neck, and it plays a really crucial role in regulating metabolism, energy levels, mood. It produces hormones like T3 and T4, and they control how your body uses energy. So when the thyroid is functioning optimally, these hormones really ensure that every cell in your body has got the right amount of energy to carry out its functions. So it plays a really big role in this energy picture. And that's why a lot of people with thyroid conditions struggle with fatigue. So when that thyroid isn't working properly, it can lead to a range of symptoms. We get metabolism problems, so we get the weight gain, we get the fatigue, we get mood changes like depression or anxiety. And one of the lesser known factors, or one of the things that people kind of look into more, is stress, chronic stress particularly. This low-lying chronic stress can really significantly impact thyroid health. And that's where the adrenals come in. So the adrenals are glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they are responsible for producing hormones like your cortisol, adrenaline. Cortisol is often referred to as the stress hormone, and it plays a key role in managing how your body responds to stress. So under normal circumstances, cortisol is going to help you to deal with stressful situations. It's going to give you that quick burst of energy, alertness. It's really going to help you to deal with something that is happening right now. And it will temporarily suppress those other functions that you don't need at that time, like digestion, for example. You know, if you come face to face with a really urgent situation, you don't need to go off and get yourself something to eat. You need your muscles to work. You need energy. So it's really making sure that those things happen in a time of stress. But when that stress becomes chronic, there's a constant demand for cortisol, and your body gets used to a higher level of cortisol, and then it needs more and more and more. And overproduction or underproduction of cortisol can disrupt many of the bodily symptoms, and that includes thyroid. And what happens with the adrenals and with the cortisol is we make more and more and more cortisol until we're making too much. And then our brain will tell our bodies to stop producing too much of it, because it can actually become toxic to the brain if we've got too much. So if we're under too much stress, that's going on all the time. So then we get low cortisol levels. And this adrenal picture is often overlooked when people are working on thyroid health, but it's really important that we do look at it, because when you are constantly stressed and your adrenals are in sort of overdrive, they're producing too much cortisol. Over time, this can lead to a state that is commonly referred to as adrenal fatigue. And doctors don't like this term, and we don't particularly like this term as functional medicine practitioners either, because it's not quite true. We would call it HPA axis dysfunction, but we use the term adrenal fatigue because it's a term that the public generally understand. They know what we're talking about. So if we're using adrenal fatigue, we're really talking about this dysfunction between the brain and the adrenals. It really is where the adrenals are struggling to keep up with your body's ever-increasing demand for cortisol until the brain steps in and stops it. But the result is that we get disrupted hormone production. Any hormone production in the body, whichever type of hormone it is, whether it's one that affects metabolism or stress or the sex hormones, whatever it is, if we get hormone imbalance, the endocrine system is a really tight-knit thing. It can knock other types of hormones off. So cortisol has a direct impact on thyroid function. High cortisol levels will actually suppress the production of TSH. And the TSH is obviously what tells the thyroid to release that T3 and T4. So that suppression from having too much cortisol can lead to a sluggish thyroid. That's also known as hyperthyroidism. Additionally, cortisol can also block conversion of T4 to T3. So we make 90% of what the thyroid makes is T4, but this is actually the inactive form, and we need to convert it to T3 so that it can be used by the body. The cortisol, if we have too much of it for too long, so if the adrenals are not good, that can actually block that conversion. So we don't convert enough of the T4 into T3. So the relationship between the adrenals and the thyroid is really tight knit, and it's also a two-way street. So it's bidirectional. So just as chronic stress can lead to thyroid dysfunction, a poorly functioning thyroid can also put extra strain on the adrenals. So if your thyroid isn't producing enough hormones, your body's going to try and compensate for that. It's going to do that by stimulating the adrenals to produce more cortisol. And then we get this vicious cycle of hormonal imbalance. And this interconnection is why so many people with thyroid issues also experience symptoms of adrenal dysfunction. And that's things like, your chronic fatigue, your brain fog, your sleep disturbances, and difficulty tolerating stress as well. So we get this stress intolerance whereby we just feel like we're not handling it as well as we used to. This is why a whole body approach really matters. And given this really complex relationship between the thyroid and adrenals, we really do need to address both at the same time. Simply taking thyroid medication is going to maybe help to balance out that TSH and maybe give you that boost in T3 and T4. But if the underlying issue is that adrenal fatigue and that is caused by this chronic stress, those symptoms are going to persist because this will just be a recurring cycle. And this is where functional medicine really emphasizes this root cause approach and whole body approach. And that's what you'll find in the book Optimal You as well. We really look at these interconnected systems across various chapters, helping you to understand how your thyroid, adrenals, gut, all the other organs communicate and affect one another. And we address those connections. Let's have a look at chronic stress and adrenal dysfunction and how that impacts this thyroid health. So when you're under a lot of stress, your body enters the state known as the fight or flight response. And this triggers the release of cortisol, which helps you to respond to immediate threats by boosting your energy and alertness. When this stress becomes a constant part of your daily life, your body actually remains in that heightened state, leading to that consistently elevated cortisol levels. Prolonged high cortisol is definitely going to wreak havoc on your endocrine system, particularly the thyroid. We've talked a little bit about this. Let's just dig into this a little bit more. The first thing we're going to get is the inhibition of thyroid hormone production. So the high cortisol levels are going to suppress that production of TSH, and that's the thyroid stimulating hormone. And that's responsible for signaling the thyroid to release T3 and T4, so the thyroid hormones. And when TSH production drops, your thyroid hormone levels are going to decrease as well. And that's going to lead to symptoms of hypothyroidism. So the fatigue, the weight gain, difficulty losing weight, cold intolerance, all of these things. Then we've got to look at the issue of this block conversion that we talked about. So not being able to convert this T4 to T3. So the body primarily releases the T4, which needs to be converted to an active form. And this is the form that can be effectively used and taken up by your cells. And that's T3. So when we've got those high cortisol levels, that can actually impair that conversion process. And that leaves you with plenty of inactive thyroid hormones, so plenty of T4. So we can see high levels of T4, but low levels of T3 because you just don't convert enough into the active form. And therefore, your body can't actually take that up. Its cells can't take it up. And we need that active form, that T3, for energy and for metabolism. The third thing that we see is increased thyroid hormone resistance. So chronic stress can actually make your cells less sensitive to the thyroid hormones. And this is known as thyroid hormone resistance. So even if your blood tests are showing normal T3 and T4 levels, your cells may not actually be utilizing them properly. So they may not be able to take them up properly. And this can actually lead to continued symptoms of low thyroid function. So it's really important that we're getting to the root causes and we're looking at that adrenal function when we're looking at thyroid. So we sort of touched on this term of adrenal fatigue, and it's not a term that you will hear in conventional medicine practices. It's a concept that is well recognized in functional medicine. And the reason it's not well recognized in conventional medicine is because the term is actually a bit misleading. And in functional medicine, like I said, as practitioners, we refer to it as HPA axis dysfunction. It's much more accurate. And what we're saying is that there is a dysfunction in that axis between the brain, the pituitary, and the adrenals. However, like we've said, most of you wouldn't know if we just started throwing that around. Most people wouldn't know what we were talking about. So adrenal fatigue has kind of become a generalized popular term that we use to talk about it. But what we're really referring to is a state where the adrenal glands have been overworked due to chronic stress, have had to continually produce that cortisol to keep up with those ever-growing demands of low-lying chronic stressors that you have in day-to-day life. And as cortisol levels become too high, it can actually become toxic to the brain, like we've said. So your brain will protect itself. Your brain is always going to protect itself and protect you, because it's much more important that your brain is safe than that you have enough cortisol to deal with a stressful event. So it will actually dampen down that cortisol production before any permanent damage is done to the brain. And this is a self-preservation thing, and our bodies are very good at this. So what we see first with people is elevated cortisol on tests. So at first we'll see, instead of the normal curve, the cortisol curve, we'll see that start to elevate and we'll be high on tests. And this is when we're getting into this sort of stage 1. And then what we'll see in later stages, that cortisol curve will be high and it will start to come back through. So it will go back through kind of normal levels, but it will go too low and it will sort of crash out into the low blue levels under where we really want to be. And that condition can lead to those symptoms of real fatigue. We can get cravings for things like salty foods as well. That's always a key sign. Sleep disturbances, and also weakened immune response. So if you feel like you keep picking up colds and getting sick as well, this can be one of the root causes behind that. And when your cortisol is too low, your stress response becomes inefficient. So actually you just can't handle stress the same. And that can further disrupt your thyroid function. The thyroid may then try to compensate by reducing its activity. So it will effectively slow down your metabolism to try and conserve energy. And that's where we get the problem with trying to lose weight. So what's the sort of real life impact for you guys on this? It's the symptoms that you're going to get. It's the signs that you're going to be able to pick up on. And it's that chronic fatigue. So it's that really feeling exhausted, even after a full night's sleep. You're not waking up feeling refreshed, or you're struggling to get throughout the day without needing cups of coffee, or you slump at 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're all fatigue signs of this adrenal thyroid imbalance. And then things like weight gain or difficulty losing weight, so especially around the middle, despite maybe eating a healthy diet and exercising well, you're just really struggling with that. Brain fog as well is another one. So difficulty concentrating, forgetfulness, feeling like mentally fuzzy, like things are just, you're not as sharp maybe as you used to be. That immune disturbance as well. So really feeling like you're picking lots of colds up, you're always sick, you don't get over things quite as quickly as you used to. Any of these things around the immune health as well, also a sign to look out for. Mood swings and irritability as well. So it can go either way. So frequent bouts of feeling anxious, so lots of anxiety, feeling very overwhelmed, or it can actually be the other way. It can also be feeling more depressed, feeling down. So it can go either way, one way or the other. Some people fluctuate as well between the two. That's sort of normal in this when you're in this state as well. Sleep issues as well, another one to look out for. So are you having difficulty falling asleep, or are you waking frequently in the night? Or like we said, just that feeling of fatigue where you wake up after actually a good night's sleep, but you're just not feeling refreshed. And then the other thing that people really don't put down to adrenals and thyroid is digestive issues. So things like bloating, constipation, irregular bowel movements, all of these things actually really can be linked to this adrenal and thyroid imbalance. So sometimes when we're looking at gut symptoms, the gut's not always the first place that we need to go. And a lot of the time, these symptoms are often just dismissed as stress. And actually, when we're thinking about that, that gut response, a lot of the time, if you're walking into a stressful situation, a genuinely stressful situation, people often get an upset stomach if they are stressed. They'll get stomach pains, they'll get bloating, they'll get an upset stomach. And that is that stress response that comes out in the gut. The butterflies in the stomach, the churning stomach that you get before you walk into doing, a presentation or a job interview or something like that. That's a stress response that you're noticing in the gut. And that's where these gut symptoms can really come into play here. And we don't always put gut symptoms down to something like the adrenals, but we really should be. And we should be pulling together these different parts of the body and taking this whole body approach. So one of the key insights that we get from functional medicine is really this kind of need to break the cycle of dysfunction. And we do that by addressing the root causes of stress. So looking at the adrenal health, looking at thyroid function, and checking to see if there's anything else around the body going on that could be impacting this. And that's why looking at the body as a whole, really, really crucial. Focusing solely on thyroid health, particularly if you've got a thyroid condition, often is going to miss the bigger picture. In the book, Optimal You, I demonstrate how stress impacts multiple systems in your body. So we look at this holistic interlinked solutions and how that can lead to better outcomes. We understand the connections. And I really wanted the reader to be able to start taking proactive steps to restoring balance instead of just managing symptoms of one area. I wanted them to be able to do this by looking at the body as a whole, being able to pull together different parts from the different sections and knowing where they need to work, what they need to do, and how to manage your symptoms effectively in a way that really will get rid of them as opposed to just masking the symptoms. But when it comes to health, it's all too common that we really focus on isolated symptoms. And we do it ourselves, as well as sort of conventional medicine do it, we do it ourselves as well. We feel fatigued, we go and have a cup of coffee. We feel anxious, we'll go and get a prescription. We get stubborn weight gain, we'll go on a restrictive diet. We do the same thing. We do it to ourselves we look at a symptom, we look what can we do to get rid of that symptom. Treating fatigue with caffeine, you're just dealing with the symptom. You're not actually getting to the root cause. You're not figuring out what's going on. And this symptom-centered approach often leads to like temporary fixes rather than lasting solutions. So, taking that fatigue and caffeine as an example, okay, that day, yeah, you might get a caffeine hit and you might feel a bit like you've got a bit more energy through that particular day. It's not going to solve the problem tomorrow. You're going to need caffeine again to help you get through the next day. So they're temporary fixes rather than long-lasting solutions. And that's the problem when we look at symptom-focused approaches to healing. And to truly heal, which really is essential that we do address the body as a whole. We understand how the different systems are interconnected and how those imbalances in one area can really ripple out and affect others. And the endocrine system is really a perfect example of this because we've got the thyroid, the adrenal glands, the pancreas, the reproductive hormones, all of these components that produce hormones and all have specific roles to play, but they don't operate in isolation. So when one part of the system is out of balance, so if the adrenals are producing too much cortisol due to the chronic stress, it's going to impact the entire network. So it's not uncommon for us to find people with adrenal dysfunction who have got sex hormones that are imbalanced as well. So this, the link is not just adrenal thyroid. That's what we're sort of focusing on today, but it's that bigger picture. There's going to be other imbalances in other parts of that endocrine system. And similarly, we can look outside of the endocrine system. So we can look to, gut health and the impact that has on thyroid function, as well as the overall hormonal balance. The gut's responsible for nutrient absorption, and that directly influences hormone production and regulation. Inflammation or imbalances in the gut, they can really disrupt the process. They can lead to issues way beyond digestion. They can lead to hormone imbalances, chronic fatigue, brain fog. All of this is why it's really critical to take that broader view and recognize how each part of the body contributes to overall health. And we really need to look at that interconnectedness. And this philosophy of interconnected health around the body, it was really important to me that this was at the heart of my book, of Optimal You. And in part 2 of the book, we look at the 8 pillars of health. Each one of those is an area of your body. For example, we've got, the adrenals, the thyroid, the gut, mitochondria. So each of these pillars is a different part of your body. And each of these chapters dives into that particular area. So there's a thyroid chapter, there's an adrenal chapter, there's a gut chapter. However, the chapters don't just work in isolation. Each chapter, as we work through this part of the body, this particular part that we're focused on, also jumps into how the various other pillars are connected. It's all about giving the reader a really comprehensive understanding of how their bodies function as a whole and why we need to address root causes rather than symptoms. And it's because that leads to more effective and sustainable outcomes. So for instance, when we're discussing thyroid health in the thyroid chapter, Optimal You doesn't just focus on the thyroid gland itself. It also explores things like, how does stress in the adrenals impact that? How does that connect to the gut health chapter? How does the thyroid connect to the mitochondria chapter? And how do all of those things influence thyroid function? So each chapter links you back to the relevant parts in other chapters so that you can develop this really holistic approach. And then readers will find that the program that's at the start of part 3, that covers all 8 pillars of our health. So it supports our whole body. But as you read on through the next following chapters in part 3, we've got parts of the program that you can adapt and advance to suit the pillars and the areas of the body that you particularly want to work on. And that's why it's really important to understand how the parts of the body interconnect, because it allows you to build a program that's going to really work for you as an individual. And the book really allows you to do this. Another example of this is the book's discussion on the immune system. So we've got a chapter on immune health. We look at autoimmune diseases, we look at thyroid conditions such as Hashimoto's and how they're often a result of chronic inflammation. And that maybe is originating in the gut or might stem from long-term stress. So all of a sudden we're in the immune chapter, but we've got the thyroid involved, we've got the gut involved, we've got adrenals involved. And we really talk about how that inflammation can be reduced through an anti-inflammatory diet, through stress management, through lifestyle changes. And we build that holistic plan that's going to look at all of these things together. And the interconnected approach is what works. It's what gets results. And it's why I wanted it to be a really significant part of the practical guide in Optimal You, so that you can, instead of just looking at that symptom and coming up with a temporary fix for the symptom, you can really find a way to see the bigger picture and work towards truly healing and restoring balance across all of the systems together. So let's look at some of the challenges that we face with thyroid issues. So one of the reasons why thyroid problems can be difficult to diagnose is that traditional blood tests might not always provide the full picture. In conventional testing, we often focus on measuring TSH, and in some cases you get T4 as well. However, they may not always detect the underlying issues. So we can't always tell from that things like how well the body is converting T4 into T3, or how effectively the thyroid is functioning under chronic stress. Your adrenals are not generally tested in conventional medicine, but even the blood panel that is done is generally relatively restrictive, and it's not a full panel, and we can't see the full picture of what's going on. So that's one of the diagnostic challenges that we face with thyroid conditions. So the other challenge that we often face is the overlap of symptoms. So the overlap of symptoms between things like adrenal dysfunction and thyroid dysfunction. So it can make it really challenging to distinguish between the two. And sometimes we can just say, oh, we've got a thyroid condition, so we're just going to put all the symptoms down to that. And actually, some of those may be coming from the thyroid, but some may be coming from something else, like the adrenals, for example. And that's where comprehensive testing, including sort of adrenal function assessments and deeper thyroid panel evaluations, become really essential. And it really helps us to understand what is coming from where and whether there are other things at play. So they're really the two main challenges that we face. If you are facing some of these challenges and you're finding that you're doing lots of things, but you're struggling to get results, what are the strategies that we would look at to support thyroid and adrenal health? I can't speak to your individual case, and the ideal is to get a full thyroid panel done and to get some adrenal testing done, and we can really see what's going on and where we need to focus our attention. But some of the sort of simple steps that we can really put in place are things like stress management. So if you've got a thyroid condition, we know it's very interlinked to the adrenals. So stress management is going to really help. It's going to be a fundamental part of supporting both the thyroid and the adrenals. Practical strategies for stress reduction is things like mindfulness practices. And this can be anything. It can be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be guided imagery, it could be journaling. There's so many different things that can act as a mindfulness practice, and you don't need to do them all. I always say to the people I'm working with, it's really important to find the one that works for you. There might be one that you just don't get on with, and there might be one that actually really, really connects with you and really works. And it's just finding something that works for you. For some people, things like meditation, they find difficult, but they find it more than easy to go out and do some yoga, and they love that. Just finding something that really works for you that allows you to have some form of mindfulness practice within your day-to-day routine. Then we have things like breathing exercises. If you do yoga, this might come into that. You might do that real deep belly breathing, or you might want to do something really simple like the 3-4-5 technique. This is one that I use with patients a lot. It's really simple. You're just breathing in for 3, holding for 4, breathing out for 5. You can do it at set times of day to help you make sure that you stick into the routine of it. One that I do a lot with people is doing it before you eat each meal. Not only does that then help digestion, but it's also helping with this stress management. And then you're going to do it 3 times a day because you're going to do 10 breaths before each meal. So you're doing it 3 times a day. You might want to do it on waking and on sleeping. That's another way of doing it. That gets it in twice a day, or you can do all of those and do it 5 times a day. But breathing exercises, really just simple practices, they can be a really good part of stress management. Also, for stress management, things like physical activity. We want regular moderate exercise. So we don't want to be doing anything particularly if we are on the sort of side of burnout where our cortisol levels are really low and we're really struggling. We don't want to be doing really intense activity. We don't want to be over exercising. It's putting an extra stressor on the body. As much as exercise is good for us, it is a stress on the body that if we are in that latter stages of adrenal dysfunction, we don't want to be doing. So we want some gentle exercise in there. So things like walking, swimming, cycling, just gentle things that we don't want to be elevating your heart rate too much. We just want you to be getting your body moving. It might be as simple as just doing some stretching. All of those things can be really beneficial for reducing stress. And that in turn can then help support the adrenals and support the thyroid health. And these steps and more, we go into these, there's a full sort of lifestyle program within the book, within Optimal You, and incorporating these into your day-to-day life to help with that role in sort of overall endocrine balance. Then we have things like nutritional support. So nutrition plays really a critical role in maintaining thyroid and adrenal health. There's certain nutrients that are really essential for hormone balance and production. So things like magnesium, really important for supporting muscle function. nervous system health, helps regulate cortisol. B vitamin's really important when we're talking about adrenal health. Selenium, really important for that conversion of T4 to T3. It's also got antioxidant properties. That's going to help protect that thyroid tissue. And then vitamin D as well, supporting that overall immune function and overall hormone health. I'm really getting that sort of balanced, nutrient-rich diet that focuses on whole foods, lean proteins, healthy fats, lots of vegetables, lots of diversity, lots of anti-inflammatory foods. That's going to help reduce that inflammation. We're going to maintain that hormonal balance. We're going to help increase diversity in the gut, which helps with your immune function and overall health. And really, we want to be avoiding those processed foods, excessive sugar, refined carbs. That's also going to be really crucial. All of those things really contribute to that inflammatory picture, which we don't want to be doing. And the 14-step nutrition plan in the book really gives you that detailed guidance on how to incorporate all of this into daily meals. There's also the online book resources. So if you buy the book, you get access to a special part of the website, and we've got recipes and meal plans and everything in there to really help you on your journey. Another thing to look at is lifestyle adjustments. So things like regular sleep patterns. So really trying to aim for that 7 to 8 hours of really consistent quality sleep a night. Poor sleep can increase cortisol. It could disrupt that hormone production. So really, sleep patterns really useful. If you've got something like an Apple Watch or a Whoop band or an Oura Ring, these things can all help for you to really get on top of what's happening with your sleep. And it's really good to look at that and assess it. I do this a lot with people that I work with. If you've got one of this health tech pieces, you can get your information off it. You can send it over, and we review all that information together. Another lifestyle adjustment might be reducing caffeine. While a cup of coffee, it really can seem sometimes like the solution to fatigue. Actually, excessive caffeine is going to overstimulate those adrenal glands, and it's going to exacerbate stress. So actually reducing the caffeine is going to be really beneficial. And then also when we're looking at something like this, we talked about not overexerting ourselves with the exercise, but making sure as well that we've got enough rest and recovery time. So really incorporating regular rest days and practices such as gentle stretching, restorative yoga, they can all really help the body to recover from stress. And really important when we've got adrenal issues that in between exercising, we do have rest days. That's really important as well. So the functional medicine approach really takes this holistic, personalized approach to health, and it really focuses on identifying and addressing the root causes of symptoms rather than just taking a symptom and putting a sticking plaster over the top of it. When it comes to thyroid and adrenal health, it really means looking at all the factors that might affect hormone balance, hormone production. That might be stress, it might be diet, it might be gut health, might be environmental toxins. And it's about pulling all of this together and building a really tailored plan that meets the individual's needs. So really using targeted supplements, building an individual nutrition plan, having those specific dietary adjustments in there that work to what's going on for you, lifestyle modifications to address the really unique aspects of each person's health. It's all really important. So in my book, Optimal You really can get a comprehensive guide to understanding our bodies better. We look at the different pillars of our health. We look at how they all interconnect. It's designed in a way that you can really start to pull this together yourself and understand how these interconnections are impacting you. It's got insights on creating a lifestyle that promotes this endocrine health, energy, vitality. It's for people who have got adrenal issues, who have got thyroid conditions. It's suitable for all of you. It's suitable for people with autoimmune conditions. And the book really empowers you to take a proactive approach to your healthcare. It's going to provide you with the tools and the knowledge that you need to address these issues effectively and holistically. And we don't just look at thyroid and adrenals in the book. We're pulling together a lot more of those interconnections as well, such as the gut health, the mitochondria, the immune function, the brain health, the hormone balance, the cardiometabolic health. We really pull that all together. If you want to grab a copy of the book, we will drop a link below where on the website, we've listed all of the places where it is stocked. It's in all your big retailers. So it's on Amazon, it's in Waterstones, it's in Smith's, it's on loads of the online websites. We've got them all listed. So I'll drop the link for that below this episode. On the website, we've actually also now got signed and personalized copies of the book. So this is a really nice thing that you can do if you want to buy a nice present for somebody. You can have it signed to the person that you're buying it for. You can have it signed to yourself. If you want to gift it to yourself, that's fine too. We can also put a personalized message in the book. So if you want to make it a present for somebody, you can put the name in that you want it made out to, and I will sign it. It'll be made out to them. And then we can also put a personal message from you to the person in the book. So it makes for a really nice present, particularly as we're approaching Christmas. Those copies are only available from the website. So from optimalyoubook.com. You can get those on there. We'll drop that link below the episode as well so that you can jump straight into that. There's no extra cost for the personalization, but it does make for a really nice present, and we will get those out to you as soon as possible. We do actually already have the stock for those. So we are sending those out pre-publication dates. So you'll be one of the first to get a copy if you get those. And actually Waterstones have already got the paperback in. So they're already shipping those out if you order from Waterstones. Other things that you can do is you can now book a 1-hour functional health assessment with me. This is a 1-hour, one-off session where we can really dig deep into your health. We can look at what things you might need to work on. We build you a plan. And this can be a really great way to start your health journey. You can also join the Thyroid and Fatigue 3-month program. So this is a mix of one-to-one sessions, group programs. You get personalized plans. You can have functional testing done within that group. So there's lots of great things within that program if you are struggling with thyroid and fatigue issues. And of course, we've got lots of other episodes on the podcast where we look at thyroid and we look at adrenals and we look at fatigue. So there's plenty more episodes for you to be digging into. I hope that you found this episode really helpful. I hope it's helped you to really understand the importance of these interconnections around the body. And I'll see you next time on the Good Health Podcast.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Good Health Podcast. Do share the episode with anyone you think it may benefit, and help us to spread the word on all things health and wellness by rating, liking, or subscribing to the podcast. If you want more, you can listen to more episodes on your favourite podcast app, or sign up to my newsletter for my favourite tips, tricks, health advice, brands, recipes, and more at nicolegoodhealth.com/newsletter. Have a lovely week. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Good Health Podcast.